Isn't that good, Renovation family? Love seeing some of our families help us make this series come to life, and so excited to be kicking off our Fam Jam series. Every year, as Pastor Lenny said, we take a moment where we want to concentrate and focus on what we can do to help the family units within our church. And since we're all family here, I'll be right open and honest with you, I'm fighting a head cold the whole weekend. And so I've done everything I can to try to get some of this away, and it's sitting right here. So I've got my tea up here. We're in this together. Thumbs up if you're with me this morning. I may ask you to repeat something. It's because I just need the break, okay? You'll notice what I'm doing there with a little trick. But so glad that you're a part of this series, and it's going to be great. I'll kick off today, but next week we have our friend Stuart Hall that is going to be in the house. He'll be preaching next week, and then we're doing a special night. I think there may be just a few spots left for the parents of teenagers on Monday night. And this is exclusively, if we can, for parents of teenagers, because Stuart is working with a phenomenal organization, travels the country, talks to lots of parents, lots of pastors, and does a ton of research on what it takes to reach the current and next generation. So you don't want to miss that. And then the following week, Pastor Lenny will be up here talking about a family on mission. And then Pastor John, because he's so much wiser, he's going to be talking on parenting through the stages, from that infancy now as a grandparent, and what that looks like for each of you in the room. But today, I'm excited to get started with talking about family. Now, here's what's very interesting, and I've gotten this question before, and the question was, Joey, maybe it's a new family getting started. It's like, Joey, which family in the Bible should I model my family after? And which family in the Bible should I go with and say, okay, this is the one, this is the family that I want to follow. They got it right. They're basically perfect. And here's the reality when you open Scripture. That family's not in here. Not in here. As a matter of fact, when you go through the Bible, you see all kinds of problems with family. You see Adam and Eve, who usher sin into the world, and then they raise the first murderer. Okay? Then you have Abraham, who conveniently says, this isn't my wife, you take her, multiple times. You have Rebecca, who played favorites with her kids and schemed her husband with a whole inheritance deal. You have Jacob, who his son sold their one brother into slavery. Not a good look. David has an affair. His son starts a rebellion. And Eli lost control of his boys at the church, and they were monsters. I mean, the whole thing is just filled with these defunct, messed up families. And that makes me feel so much better. Anybody else out there with me, right? Right? I mean, the families in the Bible weren't perfect, and there is no expectation for ours to be perfect. However, there are the principles that we see throughout God's Word that, when applied to our family, helps us navigate this thing we call relationships, raising kids, our family, extended family. And the question that you'll ask yourself is, what is God doing when he's writing this story? And I love this. It's as if God is saying, I'm going to use both churches and families made up of broken people as platforms to demonstrate to the world that I am a God of restoration and redemption. That I'm a God of restoration and redemption. And he uses the family as the platform to do that. Now, in case you didn't notice, I have two massive drums up here on stage. And these are called timpani drums. And they're used in orchestras. You'll hear them in different symphonies and things like that. And they are the loudest of all orchestra instruments. As a matter of fact, you may have heard something like this at the end of a big movie moment and a soundtrack. Let's see here. Right, like a big crescendo ending, okay? And if there's any drummers in the house, those singles were bad. So, now the reality is these drums are very cool because they're the only drums that we have in the percussion world that are actually tuned to specific notes. So right here, on this one, I have a G, and on this one, I have a D. Right, it's a fifth apart, and when you're playing in an orchestra, you have to know what key it's in, and these have to be tuned correctly. If not, you can imagine you have an entire horn section playing one thing, and then you've got these big loud drums that are playing in another, and it's just not going to work. Now, one of the things that makes these work and gives you the pitch in the tune is the tension that is being pressed on the surface of the drum. And it's adjusted by a pedal that I have right down here at my feet. So if you move it, you can hear that. Right, you guys hear that? Okay? And what's happening there is as I raise the tension on the head using the pedal, the pitch goes up, and as I lower it, it goes down. Now, this right here is kind of symbolic of our families, right? We have families, we have rhythms within our family, but then there comes these moments of tension. And one of the things that we want to immediately do when it comes to families and when it comes to tension is we want to eliminate it. We want to get rid of tension altogether. But the truth of the matter is if you eliminate tension in these drums completely, you have absolutely nothing. You have no tone, you have no pitch, you just have a flat sound. That it's actually the tension that allows us to get to the sound that we want. Same is true with our families. We want to get rid of this tension in our family, but you know what? Sometimes it's less about getting rid of the tension, and it's more about tuning it back to where God has designed our families to be, tuning it back to where we should belong. And so we're going to put it this way. We want to do this. We want to create a rhythm of following God early, right, within our families. We want to create this rhythm of following God early. And what happens is, sure enough, something's going to happen, and it's going to throw it out of tune. But what do we want to do? We want to tune the heart continually. There's going to be different phases, different stages, different places in life where things get thrown our way, and we're going to get out of tune here. Oh, we're out of tune. But we want to tune the heart continually. And that's what we're going to build upon as we go from here. And the reality is this, is that families over the scope. In most nations, in most places, in most communities, Christian or not, you can go back and see that families are what shapes and makes the impression on the world. And that's why there's oftentimes emphasis from different political leaders or people in your community that say, hey, families are important. Because even apart from God, people realize that the health of a place, the health of a nation depends on the health of a family. Now, when we go back in Scripture, there's an Old Testament leader by the name of Moses. And Moses was one that understood this really well. As a matter of fact, this was something he was learning throughout his entire life. And we come to this moment in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and Moses is 120 years old. He's getting near the end of his life. God has shared with him that he will not be going into the promised land. That is something that the next leader will take the nation into. So Moses is trying to help the people. And I want you to think about this. You've been leading this group of people for decades. You've seen the best and you've seen the worst. And you're giving your final hoorah speech to this group of people, knowing that this group of people came out of slavery of 400 years. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment because we can easily gloss over it. This means that there was no one alive around Moses that had a great-great-grandfather that understood what freedom was. Those people are gone, right? And there's generation after generation after generation that was literally born into slavery. They were born into it. And one of the things that's happening with the nation of Israel throughout the Old Testament, we give them a hard time about it, but the reality was they were coming out of what psychologists would call today that slave mentality. And the slave mentality says this: I would rather go back to the familiar than the unsafe. I would rather go back to the familiar than better, the familiar than freedom. That's why when we read throughout the nation of Israel, they constantly say, oh, but if we were back in Egypt, at least we would have meat in the pots. If we went back to Egypt, at least we would have this. It was this mentality that had been driven in generation after generation after generation. And that's why when you read through the nation's history during this time of their exodus from Egypt, there seems to be this loop. There's a lot of harsh things that take place. God, Moses working together to move people out of this mindset. And so here's Moses giving his farewell speech to the group of people. And this was their background, and this was their understanding. And this is what he says in verse 4. He says, "Hear, O Israel, The Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. In other words, the main target on the wall for you and for your families is to love God. Love God with everything that you have. These commandments I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. And then he comes down a little bit further and he says this, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Now, here's what is taking place in this moment. Moses is going back to the people, and he's telling them, I want you to create a rhythm within your family. When you lie down, when you get up, when you walk along the road, tie them on your hands, put them on your doorpost. Create a healthy rhythm in your life, because what's getting ready to happen? You're getting ready to experience some tension. You're going to have a lot of blessings in the promised land, but that's going to come with problems as well. And you need to create and establish a rhythm in the life of your family that continually points your children and the community back to God. Moses realized that God chose the family and the faith community as the two entities through which he would tell his story to the generations to come. Moses is looking out and understanding the healthy rhythms that you create in your families are what's going to continue to tell the story of who God is, the story of the rescue from Exodus. You're going to tell that one true story over and over and over, generation after generation after generation. And it's going to be as a result of rhythms that you create in the life of your family that consistently point them back to faith. And he would use the family. Here's what's so cool about God. He would use the family as the tool to usher in the Messiah, Jesus. I mean, think about it. There was a lot of different ways that he could have sent Jesus to earth, right? I mean, for the nerd in me, like a really cool Marvel moment, like an explosion and like and then boom, he's like standing in the middle. Like there's a lot of really cool ways he could have done it. But what does he use? He uses the platform of the family. Hey, and that wasn't without tension itself, right? Mary, unwed, becoming pregnant by God himself. I mean, there's tension there. That's not a normal part of what they were hearing and seeing in the day. But yet he chooses to use this type of situation, the family, to present and tell the story of redemption, to present and tell the story of rescue. So one of the stories that I wanted us to look at today, and one that honestly I haven't heard taught very often. It's a very short story, but it's one about Jesus as a boy at the temple. And this takes place in Luke chapter 2 is where we're going to be. And let me give you a little bit of background to this story. Once a year, Mary and Joseph, they had a rhythm. And they had a rhythm like most Jewish families in that day. And the rhythm was that they would attend the feast of the Passover. And so every year at the same time, they would make a journey from Nazareth all the way to Jerusalem. This was every year, didn't matter what was going on, didn't matter what was happening with the family. This was a steady rhythm of the people in this time. Joseph, being the man of the house, would be able to participate inside the temple as part of this feast of the Passover exercise. Mary would accompany him. But there's something significant about this moment is because Jesus is now 12 years old. And Jesus is now moving into position as a boy at the age of 12, along with his other Jewish friends, would be able to now take a part in this in a way that he had never done before. And so there's this moment that happens where Jesus is hanging out there, and we'll just read it together. Now his parents, verse 41, now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, and as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. And his parents, what are those next few words there? His parents what? Did not know it. Verse 44. But supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem searching for him. Now, we're going to hit the pause button real quick. In case you're wondering what's going on here, they lost Jesus, okay? They just lost Jesus. Right now, if you're married, and I understand this to be so real, mom guilt is a real thing. I have a wife, I get it. Anything that happens to my children, they're guilty, they carry it. Now, can you imagine being the mother of God's son and you lost him, right? Not a good look, okay? You want to talk about tension, that's tough. You lose your kid for 5 or 10 minutes. They lose Jesus for 3 days. They can't find him. I mean, this doesn't look good for Mary at all. I mean, I'm sure she's thinking like, Gabriel is going to bust back up in my house again because I have lost Jesus. What are we going to do? You got the Karen of Nazareth, going, did you hear what Mary did? She lost Jesus. She never really pays attention because that Jesus, it wasn't him. He's perfect. I mean, he never does anything wrong. You know what I mean? All the rumors that are probably going around, they're having to go from family to family. Have you seen Jesus? Have you seen Jesus? We don't know. You lost Jesus. I mean, the guilt, the anxiety has to be heavy in this moment, right? Verse 46, it says this. After 3 days, okay? Not one day, not like an hour, talking 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at the understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. Now, what I want us to key in here is the response of Mary and Joseph is extraordinarily significant in this moment. And it says, and his mother said to him, Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. That word distress can be translated from the Greek to mean painful anxiety. That there was a weight on them as a parent that was literally painful for them, the anxiousness that they have in trying to seek out and to find where Jesus was. And I love the fact that Mary asks this question to Jesus, because this is actually the first recorded words that we have of Jesus in the New Testament. It's his response to this answer. And he said to them, why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? And of course, Jesus being Jesus just answers the question with the question, right? In verse 50 says, and they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. Now, when you look at this, one thing to pull out from here that's really important is that Jesus was not rebelling against his parents in this moment. As a matter of fact, this was the first time that Jesus was able to sit in the place that best represented his eternal home. I want you to think about this for a minute. Jesus existed for all eternity past as God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit within the Trinity. Jesus, inside the temple, for the first time, now being 12 years old, this was the place that was most like his eternal home. The interesting thing about Jesus in this moment is that both being fully God and fully man, Jesus had 2 places to call home. And the significance of this moment was Jesus' recognition that being in the temple, that this is where I belong. There was a familial connection that was there that he had probably never experienced in his life up until this very moment. It's as if he was to say, I'm here at the house with my Father, and there's nowhere else that I should be. I'm right where I belong. And so what do Mary and Joseph have to do from this moment forward as parents? They have to now navigate both Jesus in the flesh and the divinity of who he is. That's a big deal. And you can imagine as a parent, as Mary, trying to guide Jesus, that this is going to be moments that are not without tension, moments that are not without trying to understand who this child is and what does this mean moving forwards. They're trying to navigate it just like you and I are. Mary doesn't have all the answers, right? Gabriel came to her and said, hey, behold, you will be with child, and you will call him Jesus. See you later, right? There was no handbook, no manual, no nothing. When we had our kids, there's no handbook, no manual, no nothing, right? Same place. We can feel this here. But it's because of her response that this passage stood out to me. Verse 51 says, and he went down, Jesus, and came with them to Nazareth, and was submissive to them, obedient to them, following them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, as a parent, if my kid goes missing for like 30 minutes and it's because they didn't tell me, I'm snatching my kid. Like, let alone like 3 days. Any other kid snatchers in there? It's like, what are you doing? I mean, I'm probably going to address this in a way after 3 days of hunting for my child, and I find them, whether they, Jesus didn't do anything wrong here, but my kids, they've done something wrong, right? Okay, so I'm going to snatch my kids. I'm going to have an emotional moment that's probably not the best, like for Pastor Joey to have. I might have an emotional moment that my kids are like, Joey, Dad, what was that all about, right? We're going to have a moment. But what doesn't happen here, that doesn't happen in Mary. As a matter of fact, Mary just says, though I don't understand all of this that's going on, I'm going to treasure this in my heart. That my response is going to be one that stays focused on our main target, which is what? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. I'm going to stay focused on that. And as a result, this is what we know of the next several years of Jesus, because we don't hear anything else until he goes into his earthly ministry. And Jesus, verse 52, increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God. And I fully believe that the way that the parents of Jesus navigated the tension of this moment helped set Jesus up for great success. So here's what I want to do. We're going to pull this apart just a little bit. And I want to look at that response from them and how did they correctly navigate the tension. And the first point is this. They correctly navigated this tension because they had created the priority of faith in their home. That the priority of faith was already there and it was already in existence. That every day there were things that they did as a family that reminded them of who God was, reminded him of God's promises. Because at the time, they would have been, without a doubt, a Deuteronomy 6 type of family. Write them on your doorpost. Talk about it when you lie down, when you wake up, when you walk down the street. They knew to create rhythms. The Feast of the Passover was one of many of the different rhythms that the family would have had, that they would have been exercising each and every time that they got together. It was a priority for Joseph. It was a priority for Mary, and it paved the way for Jesus to recognize and understand the same priority. Part of the reason that Jesus was so enamored to be there in the temple was because it was the connecting point of the rhythm that they had already been establishing, the God that they had taught about, and then he's in this moment. But here's the reality. This principle applies to us today as parents. It does. Because when our kids or when people in our family seem to go out of tune, things have been going good, right? But all of a sudden, something's getting off a little bit. When we have established rhythms within our family, it comes back to tuning the hearts. Maybe it's the heart of the parent. Maybe it's the heart of the child, right? Maybe it's the heart of this other family member. But when there's a rhythm that's established, it allows us to go back to that baseline point. The rhythms of your family are so important because they show the priorities that you have. They show the priorities that are in your house. And a lot of the things that we hold as parents that are priorities, we want to see those things passed on in our kids. And here's just something to think about. The priorities of our families today have the most potential to be carried on by our children tomorrow if they're exercised daily, if there's a rhythm to them. right? If you have that constant rhythm, that is how those priorities get moved from generation to generation, from your kids to the next. Now, is that a perfect solution? Absolutely not. And sometimes we've got these rhythms down, and sometimes that child just goes and they do their own thing, and they hang out here out of tune for a long time, okay? Anybody got some long out of tune ones out there, right? We know that, we understand that. But there's something about having the priority of rhythm, of exercising within the family. We're going to pray together. We're going to do church together. We're going to love each other. This is what we call back to these values, because that is the foundational place where our conversations go from here on, right? So they create a priority of faith in their home. Here's the second thing. The reason that Jesus' parents navigated the tension correctly is because they had equipped Jesus for the phase of life that he had arrived to. See, at 12 years old, in this moment, Jesus was considered under the law. And what this means in this time is now that Jesus is responsible for his own growth in his faith, for his own studies of the Torah, for his own understanding and responsibility of following the law of God. It is on him at this point. Mary and Joseph, throughout their lives, creating that rhythm, they were recognizing the position that Jesus had arrived at. They were not taken, it says they were astonished when they saw him in the temple. And I believe a part of that was them just seeing, yes, this is exactly what we have set him up to be about and to be a part of. For us in the room, we want to make sure that we're developing our kids and that we are helping develop our teenagers in a way that sets them up for that phase of life that they're going into. Now, I know we look at this and we're like 12 years old under the law, and now it's 18, and things are different. I get that. The way that kids are raised and teenagers are raised today it's a different type of cycle. But nonetheless, it doesn't give us as a parent the excuse to step back, or the grandparent the excuse to step back and not make sure that we're doing everything that we can to set these kids up in a way that they will continue to see who Jesus is. Discipleship is one of those things we talk about a lot in the church world. You'll hear this term discipleship. If we wanted to boil it back all the way to its simplest definition, we would say it's developing the heart and the mind of someone, whether it's a kid or a teenager or another adult. We're going to develop the heart and the mind. And in the church world, we would say to grow closer in their faith with God, right? It's intentional. It's something that we do with one another, something we do with our kids in Camp Renovate and in Reno City. We want to disciple and teach them. But discipleship also takes place outside the church. There are constantly messages that are going out for your kids and for your teenagers and for the members of your family that are counter to the things of God. One of the easiest illustrations that I can use, and I could have put up tons of statistics. I had all kinds of numbers I was going to show you. But I was like, I'm going to boil it down to one. I told you about the night we're having with Stuart Hall. We've asked every parent that signed up to send us 3 of the topics that they're struggling with the most when it comes to raising the next generation. Just send us your top 3. 90% of them was all technology and social media. And then it was like mental health, and then some other things kind of sprinkled and scattered in. Those were the top ones. So I want you to think about it from this perspective. One of the ways we know that we disciple our kids is the time that we spend with them. You can't disciple without there being time. So just from a time perspective, knowing that I as a parent, I as a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, the ones of influence over the next generation, small group leader, whoever that is, I have a certain amount of time. So what and who else is discipling my children as well? One of those that we know is social media. No doubt about it whatsoever. If we look at it from just a time perspective, the average teenager in the U.S. uses TikTok 1 hour and 47 minutes per day, okay? No one's shocked about that. It's like, yeah, that probably makes sense. Teenagers, you're like, yeah, if I go back and look at my phone right now, spread throughout the day, that's probably pretty close to what it is. Some days more, some days less. And so, just follow me here. As a parent, I had to ask some questions to myself while I was preparing, and here's one of them. How much time am I spending discipling my children through conversations on worldview, faith, and life? Let's just stop there. right? Like, that made me think, okay, I know that there are things out there trying to disciple my own children. Social media being one of them, TikTok being one, Instagram. Like, did I get an hour and 47 minutes today to try to disciple my child? If we're going one-to-one with TikTok today? Probably not. And I'm not expecting you to have that either, right? But the reality is there are things out there, social media being one of them, that are trying to disciple our kids, and so are we. They're sending messages on culture and worldview and how things should be. And we as parents who are believers in Christ, have another set of values that we are working and trying to get our kids to believe. This is why the rhythm thing is so important. Because if there's an established rhythm of loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your strength, and it's year after year after year, that turns into a compounding effect of discipleship on our kids. There's no way that a parent, from getting rid of everything in another child's life, is going to outdo some of the influences that are coming in, whether it's social media, their friends, whatever it may be. But I bring this up for us to see visually here. Here's what we're up against. There are things that are trying to disciple our kids, and every minute that we have, that we can spend with our kids, helping them understand who God is and what He has for them, that's where we want to be. That's why I want to push on a couple things as a parent. One of the things that we'll struggle with as parents is, and I've struggled with it as well, but what do you do when your kid doesn't want to go to church? What do you do when your kid does, as a teenager, says, hey, I don't want anything to do with that? I want to encourage you. That's a tough one. It's a difficult one. I'm here with you. Like, the empathy that is involved in saying, hey, I don't want to push it on them. I don't want to force it on them. But here's the thing. There's these moments in time where we as parents say, hey, this is what we do as a family. This is what we are going to do as a family. You may do something different when you have a family of your own, but today we are going to church. Today we are going to do, why? It's not because we're trying to create a whole lot of extra tension in the house, though it will. It all goes back to creating a healthy rhythm within the dynamics of our family. That's where it begins. And this isn't just my idea. This goes all the way back to the heroes of faith. You go back and you look at Joshua, the successor to Moses. And he's now leading this whole group of people. And again, there's some out-of-tune tension stuff that's taking place. And then he tells us this is an amazing passage in Joshua chapter 24. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. And then he makes this declarative statement. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. But as for me and my house, as the father, in his home, he says, you may do with your kids what you would like. You may do with your family. You got whatever. But I want you to know, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Does it cause tension? I'm sure it does. But the reality is also this. If we go back to our time perspective, you never know what God will plant in the life of your teenager in the 60 minutes that they're here with you on a Sunday. You just don't know. You have no idea what they may hear. They may ignore everything and hate everything else, but they may hear something that the seed is planted. We know that God's word does not return void, right? And who knows what God is going to do with that. If you've ever been on a youth camp trip, you see what God does on youth camp trips. You know what I'm talking about. It's these moments that we say, hey, this is what we do. This is a rhythm for our family moving forward. Here's the third thing, that Jesus' parents, their ultimate goal was to please God in every area of life. Remember the beginning of Deuteronomy chapter 6, the Lord with all your heart, soul, strength. They were the target on the wall that kept the emotions of the moment in check, that kept the response of Mary and Joseph in check, was what was most important was pleasing God. That was goal number one, the most important thing. And we see this because the response of Mary was what? She just treasured this moment in her heart. I don't understand it. She said that. They didn't have a clue what he was talking about. Matter of fact, most of the things that Jesus says to his parents, they probably didn't understand what he was talking about. It's kind of a common thread when you're around Jesus. They're like, wait, what does that mean? Right? Same thing. But what does she do? Doesn't get frustrated, doesn't get angry. She treasures them in her heart, trusting in what? That God has a bigger plan and a bigger picture. Oftentimes when our kids are out of sync and out of tune, God is still at work. God is still doing something there. God is still in the process of tuning the heart where he desires it to be. And it can be uncomfortable and it's difficult. I'm not saying that it's not, but it's part of that process. And as parents, as grandparents, as the aunt and uncle in the room, your rhythms of trusting in God, your rhythms of being consistent are one of the greatest impacts you'll ever have on the next generation. So let's do this, church, together. Let's create a rhythm of following God early and tune the heart continually. Through every stage and phase of life, through the difficulties, we're praying. And sometimes that tuning is just praying. God, I've got to give this to you. There'll be those moments, and I've sat with parents of teenagers, and I don't know, but he's so far out there, she's so far out there, that what are we going to do? And sometimes it comes down to, you know what? Maybe you can't trust anybody else with your kid right now, but you got to just trust God. You got to trust God that he takes over on the tuning, that he brings them back to that place that he desires for them to be. But as a parent, don't let go of the rhythm. Keep it going, one right after the other. Stay consistent. It's hard, but I want you to do it. This is how God uses the family as a platform of redemption and restoration from generation to generation. So how can I help you? Because you can come off of something like this and it's like, oh, that hurt, but I want to help you. I want to resource you. And so we've spent the last 2 months collecting resources for you as a parent. A lot of these are free resources. These are things that I've gone through. Our different staff has handpicked out for you. You can find these on our website. The little red ticket that you have in your seat, that QR code will take you right here. Everything from podcasts to sermon series to books, research. There's a ton of resources, even down to games that you can play as a family that help develop the emotional intellect of your children. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff on there because I don't want to just get up here and tell you some things. I want to help you. I want to partner with you. I want to bring out 3 resources that I want to take a moment to show you that I think every family with a child or teenager should look at and be invested in. And the first one is Bark. How many of you out there, parents, you've been in the same place I've been where you've almost pulled all of your hair out trying to make your devices safe for your kids? Anybody in there? And every device has a different way of doing it, and it's just, it will numb your mind like nothing else. And so one of the things that I love about Bark is they make it simple. They make it really easy. Bark now actually makes phones. You pay for it, it's cheap. You get a Samsung Galaxy, whatever, and it's built in it, and it protects your kid. It blocks things they shouldn't be seeing. It just makes safeguards simple on all your devices. You can even put it on your home router, so when the babysitter comes over and they jump on your Wi-Fi, you'll know if they're looking at stuff they shouldn't be looking at. All right, so if you really like that side of things, you can do that. But it protects your entire home internet, your phones, all of those things. And here's what I love about Bark. If there's something that happens, let's say my daughter's texting somebody, and the conversation, this thing is incredibly smart, goes sideways, even using the most far out euphemisms, slang, whatever you want to call it, I get a report. It gives me an alert. It says medically concerning, or it says potential bullying or whatever. It pulls up. I can see the whole conversation, but here's what I love about it. At the end of that, it says, here are some questions to talk with your child about concerning this issue. It's not just a gotcha, that's not it. How do we have the conversations? How do we have questions? How do we dialogue? This is what Mary does when she sees Jesus, right? Why have you done it? She asks a question. And this is one of those resources that'll help you as a parent. There's a lot of great things about it, and it's simple, easy, and very affordable. The next one is a book called The TechWise Family. This helps put the whole family on the same page when it comes to devices. I don't know if you've ever been in a house with a child that says, well, mom said I could do this, and dad said I could do this. It's like, wow, yes, all right. When it comes to devices and technology, this is a great plan for an entire family to adopt to make sure that technology doesn't become the overwhelming factor in the home. So that's called a TechWise family. And then the last one I want to share with you is a resource called Axis, axis.org. I recently went back on their website, and they have everything now for you for free. This is probably, I believe it's the greatest resource for parents that's out there that helps you understand what's going on in the current culture with your teenagers especially, but oftentimes now like 4th and 5th grade kids, and then how you as a parent can have conversations with your child about the issue, the topic, the trend, whatever it is, and it always points back to faith. It's not cheesy, it's conversation driven. Their culture newsletter that they send out weekly is worth just visiting the website, because what it does is it takes the top trending things that are out there in culture and goes, here's what your kid will probably see this week at school, here's what it's about, here's how it works, here's some questions to begin a conversation with them about it. It's so much about healthy conversation that you just, as a parent, you can't afford to miss out on a resource like Axis. I love it. Matter of fact, the Culture Translator 2 weeks ago was Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. Here's how your teenager might see it. Here's what platforms they'll see it on. Here's some conversation questions to ask them about it. It's helping you as a parent get into the conversational life of your kids. So can't say enough good things about Axis. Again, not affiliated with me personally. I just think it's a great, great resource. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, these things are great. These things are going to help you. There's a lot of other things that maybe I don't even know about that can help you. But the greatest resource for you to create a rhythm in your family is a personal relationship with Jesus. And maybe you're here today and you're in it as a parent. You're in it as a grandparent. But you realize creating a rhythm for me is going to be difficult because I don't have the foundation to start it off of. I don't know what tempo to run at because I don't have a relationship with Jesus myself. And I want to invite you into that moment, that today you can start that healthy rhythm by starting a relationship with Jesus. So if you would, every head bowed and every eye closed, if that's you today in the room, and you've never surrendered your life to Christ, you've never taken that moment to give your life to Him, I'm going to lead you in a prayer. And there's nothing incredibly special about the words of this prayer, but what makes it so special is that you say it and you mean it from the heart. So if that's you in the room and you're ready to give your life to Christ today, I want you to repeat this prayer to yourself after me. God, thank you for sending your Son Jesus to die for my sin. God, forgive me of the things that I've done wrong, the sins that I have committed against you. God, I pray that you would bring me into your family. I surrender my life to you today. And from this moment forward, I want to walk in your truth. I want to walk in relationship with you. If that was you this morning and you prayed that prayer, I'm asking you to do something bold, but it's because I also want to help you, because we love you and we want to equip you. If that was you, if you would, on the count of 3, just raise your hand up. Just raise your hand up. We have some friends here that they want to put something in your hand. Just raise your hand up on 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and raise your hand up. If that was you, you prayed that prayer for the first time, just slip your hand up. Just slip your hand up. We've got hands up. We had some hands up in the last hour. We've got a resource that we want to give you to put in your hands because we believe this is the best decision you've ever made. And we don't want you to miss out on what God has for it. Let's pray together. God, we come to you. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for the hands raised. We thank you for those that are online, that have surrendered to you. God, I pray that you would help us to grow closer to you each day. Help us figure out every day how to navigate the tension, how to tune the heart back to the way that you've called us to be. In your name we pray. Amen.